what I was discovering if you have any familiarity with my work, is that the language is echoing us in ways that weaken us. It's holding up a sonic mirror all the time that is reflecting back to us that life is miserable, that everything is split and oppositional, and that women are inferior, and that you have to do it exactly right in this one lifetime or you go to hell forever. It's been not so easy for people to get to remember who they are and to be truly who they are.
Welcome to Voicecraft, a context for transformative philosophy, cultivating culture, and the craft of voice. This is a podcast from the Elder Circle series, welcoming Laurel Airica, a woman with a unique creative intelligence and an incredible passion for word magic, as she calls it, and certainly embodies it. Her life's work centers around bringing awareness to the mysteries, marvels, and potencies of language, of the profound meanings of words which somehow go unnoticed even as we utter them. The Elder Circle series is an ongoing experiment to welcome beings who have traversed and are perhaps still traversing the creative ordeals life throws our way, to share the gift of their knowledge or genius to a gathered community. These sessions are available to attend for members of the Voicecraft network, and in that way they also serve as an effort to develop just one distinct practice of welcoming voices into a community for the benefit of a broader commons. Welcome to Elder Circle. It's a privilege to welcome you, and thank you for welcoming us into this experience that I now feel well and truly energetically involved in. So I'm very much looking forward to it too. And as you know, this is a session with the title of Elder Circle. And what that really means is that the five of us here, including Journey, who's off screen at the moment, will be in dialogue with you, Laurel.
Yeah. Thank you. This will be a first for me, except I lead writing groups, and so there's more people at once, but usually not quite this orchestra of voices. So we'll see how it goes. Thank you.
Well, I consider us already well and truly in it. And from here on, please, no one look to me until later on in this session when I signal that we're moving towards a close, if someone else doesn't do that. So from here on out, my logistical role is through, and I'm actually going to end that with pointing things over actually to Tom. Because Tom, I think what you were expressing just before we turned on the recording button might actually be a beautiful way to begin. So if you don't mind sharing that perspective, or perhaps another that's alive for you, I'd be really curious to hear how Laurel relates to that as an opening into this exploration together.
Thanks, Tim. So what I said was, it seems like we're entering into a time where more and more people are going to be saying the right words. And it's going to become more about discerning where those words are coming from and the energetic resonance coming through the words. Over the last couple of months, I've spent a lot of time reviewing and analyzing various projects in these sort of internet spaces, and there's a lot of the same words. And I notice at this point, I actually sort of find myself dropping out of the semantic space and down into the actual emotional resonance of the words. And the word that came to mind to describe this for me was the religious impulse. Like how strong is that sort of fiery flame coming through people as they're speaking? And so, yeah, maybe you can riff off of that.
Well, when you're speaking of the fire of religious impulse, are you talking about people who would describe themselves as born again, someone with a deep Christian perspective, or are you talking about an awakening that has no religious denomination?
Yeah, I mean more generally as sort of a coming alive, the sense of reconnecting with something like Eros and really feeling compelled back into the world, into sort of states of expansion.
Yes, well, every seed has its moment to bloom. And with some seeds only bloom after a wildfire. So nature has reseeded, Father Nature reseeded itself in us and through us to bring forth the genius that is so evident in all her creation. And yet we have been misguided to think that we ourselves are not genius. I was looking at a plant once a couple of years ago, and I thought, what a genius plant that is. And then I realized every plant is a genius plant. The whole creation is genius, which means so are we. So yes, there will come a time when the language is more tuned up, and then everything, I guess, moves toward entropy and all sorts of stuff. So people have been able to say the right things, that for a swindle, a lie, even before, even when we're in a language that is in such an odd condition and greatly in need of a global tune-up that we can do for our own pleasure and profit, meaning opening up to allow divine wisdom to come in and make a profit of us, and then a place to send it in where if it is selected for marketing or something else, to profit from it. So you talked about Eros, and Eros, the god of love and sensual pleasure. And what I've discovered over the years is that one's ability to have very exquisite sensations does not need to, be limited to the base chakra and the mouth. That we can speak beauty. And because we're living in a universe where everything is echoing, reverberating, and mirroring, the more we are speaking from our heart, the more beauty we'll be creating within and around us. And as for genius, because I have been so deeply informed just by looking at words, I see in that genie us. Each one of us has magical creative powers, and no one is left out of that. I grew up not knowing I was smart, and then realized at a certain point that genius is an inborn capacity, each maybe tuned to a particular frequency of genius that we bring through that may not even be recognized by a school at this point, but it's something unique you're going to bring through, which is what my experience has been at a time when I was first exploring words as a little girl. The idea that words might be more closely related through sound than meaning was considered absurd, and all sorts of stuff. So, but the genius, also known as the daimon, D-A-I-M-O-N, associated with demon, because you're not supposed to have your own pipeline to the divine, but your daimon is this genius that wants to live your best life through your vehicle. And sometimes it's in the background for some people, but I think the daemon is part of what is waking up in people. And I mentioned the word entelechy, which means an actuality versus a potentiality, but it also means that inner force that urges you to self-actualize. And I analogize it with an acorn. That is one tough shell. And there has to be such an impulse in that little nut in the center, that little soft nut, which is like a cosmic computer chip with the whole blueprint for, I mean, talk about 3D printing. This is out of nothing. And comes an oak that can last for certainly a century, possibly more, nourish all sorts of beings, create firewood, all sorts of stuff. That impulse to crack the nut and birth the seed, and then it is in a perilous condition for insects and birds and rodents, and yet some of it have it to make it through, and they do. And I believe that what's waking up in all of us, that you referred to, Tom, as a religious impulse, I believe it's the impulse to self-actualize, because each one of us is the infinite in finite form. And who wants to be anything less than the fullness of their being? There's nothing on the outside that you could possibly have that would be as sweet and delicious, which brings me back to Eros, god of sensual pleasure. And wouldn't you know it, it's right smack at the center of the word generosity. So kindness extended to others creates an exquisite sensation of higher vibrations that lift our consciousness, and on opportunities gives us the chance to taste bliss for a moment or two, because you have just created a contribution to someone's life synchronistically, and that is so inspiring and empowering for them. So that's what I think the religious impulse is. It's the same one that the caterpillar feels when it's ready to sacrifice its whole existence, melt down in its little sarcophagus or cocoon. You don't know for certain when you enter it, but to emerge a butterfly. And this, I believe, is our time to fly together. Thank you.